The Wyoming wind screamed like a banshee, tearing across the plains with a fury that could strip flesh from bone. Snow fell in sheets, thick and relentless, swallowing the world in white. Cole Mercer pulled his duster tight, the leather creaking under his gloved hands. His horse, a gray mare named Ghost, snorted, her breath steaming in the dusk. The cold bit deep, gnawing at his knuckles, his knees, the old scar along his jaw. Ain't no night to be ridin', he thought, squinting into the storm. But when is it ever? Cole was 38, though the years felt heavier than that. A decade of drifting had carved lines into his face, each one a story he'd rather forget. Folks called him Mercy once, a name earned in a war he didn't win, for saving men who didn't deserve it. Now it was just a whisper in saloons, a half-remembered tale of a man who'd outlived his purpose. He rode alone, always had, save for Ghost and the ghosts in his head. The frontier was wide, but not wide enough to outrun them. The storm had caught him unawares, rolling down from the mountains like a judgment. He'd meant to reach Laramie by nightfall, to trade furs for whiskey and a warm bed. But the trail had vanished under snow, and now he was lost in a sea of white, the world reduced to the crunch of hooves and the howl of wind. Keep moving, he told himself. Stop, and you're dead. Then he saw it, a shadow in the snow, jagged and wrong. He reined Ghost to a halt, his hand resting on the revolver at his hip. The shape resolved as he drew closer. A stagecoach, tilted at a broken angle, half buried in a drift. One wheel spun lazily in the wind, creaking like a gallows. The horses were gone, likely cut free or dead. The driver's seat was empty, save for a frozen hand clutching the reins. The rest of the man slumped somewhere below. Cole's breath caught. Trouble, he thought, always trouble. He'd seen wrecks before. Bandits, weather, bad luck. None of it ever ended well. He nudged Ghost forward, his eyes scanning the snow for tracks. None. Just the endless white and the faint groan of wood as the wind rocked the coach. He dismounted, boots sinking into the drift. The cold clawed at his legs, but he ignored it, moving to the coach's door. It was jammed, warped by the crash. He yanked hard, the wood splintering, and peered inside. Darkness, and then a gasp. A woman's face, pale as the snow, stared back at him. Her eyes were wide, her lips trembling. Beside her, 2 children clung to her skirts, a boy maybe 11, and a girl no older than 7. Their breath puffed in quick, frightened clouds. You hurt? Cole's voice was rough like gravel underfoot. He didn't mean it to be, but that's how it came out. The woman shook her head, though her hands gripped the children tighter. We're alive, she said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. The driver? He's gone. The horses too. Cole glanced at the driver's frozen hand, then back to her. Gone ain't the word. Dead, more like. He stepped back, scanning the wreck. The axle was snapped, the cargo scattered, trunks and bags half buried in the snow. No food, no blankets, not much of anything to keep them warm. They won't last the night out here. Please, the woman said, softer now. My children, they're cold. We can't stay here. Cole's jaw tightened. Walk away, his mind whispered. Ain't your fight. He'd made that mistake before, playing hero, thinking he could save someone. It always ended in blood. But the girl's eyes caught his, big and brown, shining with something he hadn't seen in years. Hope, maybe, or just desperation. Name's Cole, he said, gruff. Got a place we can hole up, 'bout a mile off. Old mining shack. Ain't much, but it's got walls. He didn't ask their names. Didn't want to know. Names made things personal, and personal meant pain. The woman nodded, pulling her children closer. I'm Clara. This is Eli and Rosie. The boy, Eli, straightened, trying to look brave. The girl, Rosie, just shivered, her small hands clutching a rag doll. Cole turned away, hiding the flicker of unease in his chest. Just get him to shelter. Then you're done. He rummaged through the wreckage, salvaging what he could. A blanket, a tin of beans, a broken lantern. He helped Clara and the children out, steadying her as she climbed down. Her hands were cold, even through her gloves, but her grip was firm. She wasn't weak, he realized. Scared maybe, but not weak. The trek to the shack was slow, the wind pushing against them like a living thing. Cole led Ghost, the mare plodding through the snow with the children bundled on her back. Clara walked beside him, her shawl flapping like a tattered flag. No one spoke. The only sounds were the crunch of snow, the creak of saddle leather, and the distant cry of a hawk, sharp and mournful. The shack appeared through the blizzard like a ghost itself. Sagging boards, a caved-in roof on one side, but standing. Barely. Cole kicked the door open, the hinges groaning. Inside, it was dark and damp, smelling of rot and old earth. A rusted stove sat in one corner, a pile of broken crates in another. No firewood, but he'd make do. "Stay here," he told Clara, handing her the blanket. "I'll get a fire going." Eli hopped off Ghost, his boots thudding on the floor. "I can help," he said, his voice eager but thin. Cole eyed him. The boy's face was set, determined, like he had something to prove. "Kid's got grit," Cole thought, but he didn't say it. "Fine, stack them crates, break them if you have to." Clara knelt by Rosie, wrapping the blanket around her. "Thank you," her voice low but clear, "for helping us." Cole didn't look at her. "Don't thank me yet, ma'am," he said, his breath fogging in the cold. "Storm ain't over." He stepped outside, the wind biting at his face. He gathered what wood he could. Splinters from the crates, a few dry branches buried under snow. His hands moved fast, mechanical, but his mind was elsewhere. "Why'd you do it, Cole? Shoulda kept riding." But he knew why. Those eyes, Rosie's, Clara's, even Eli's, they'd hooked him, same as a fish on a line. He'd seen too many die to let it happen again. Not tonight. Back inside, he coaxed a fire to life in the stove, the flames casting flickering shadows on the walls. Clara and the children huddled close, their faces softening in the warmth. Rosie's doll lay forgotten at her feet, its button eyes staring blankly. Eli fed the fire, his small hands steady. Clara watched Cole, her gaze sharp, like she was trying to read him. He didn't like it. "Where are you headed?" he asked, more to break the silence than anything. "Laramie," Clara said. "I'm a teacher. Was a teacher back east. My husband." Her voice caught, just for a moment. "He passed last spring. Thought we'd start fresh out here." Cole nodded, staring at the flames. Widow, kids, no man to protect them. The West wasn't kind to folks like that. He knew it better than most. "Bad time of year to travel," he said. "We didn't have a choice," she replied, her tone firm. "Sometimes you move forward, or you break." He glanced at her then, caught off guard by the steel in her voice. She wasn't just surviving, she was fighting. For them, for herself. "She's stronger than you," his mind whispered, and he pushed the thought away. The fire crackled, the only sound for a long moment. Then Rosie spoke, her voice small but clear. "Mr. Cole, you got a family?" The question hit like a bullet. Cole's hand froze on the stove's handle. Family. The word conjured faces he'd buried long ago. His sister, laughing by a creek, his mother, humming as she sewed, the men he'd led to their deaths, or that their screams louder than any hymn. "No," he said, his voice flat. "Ain't got nobody." Rosie tilted her head, her brown eyes wide. "That's sad," she said, not accusing, just stating a fact. "Rosie," Clara said softly, but Cole waved her off. "She's right," he said. "It is sad." He stood, brushing soot from his hands. "Get some rest. I'll keep watch." He stepped to the door, his back to them, and peered into the storm. The snow was slowing, the wind less fierce, but the cold still burned. He pulled his hat low, his fingers brushing the revolver at his hip. Something wasn't right. The wreck, the driver's body, the way the horses were gone, it didn't add up. Someone did this, he thought. And they ain't done yet. The firelight flickered behind him, Clara's soft voice murmuring to her children. Cole's chest tightened. He'd save them, sure. But for how long? The West didn't let you keep what you loved. It took, and it took, until you were nothing but dust. He leaned against the doorframe, the cold seeping into his bones. "Don't thank me yet, ma'am," he thought again. "Storm ain't over." The shack groaned under the weight of the storm, its timbers creaking like old bones. The wind had eased, but the cold lingered, seeping through cracks in the walls. Inside, the fire in the rusted stove cast a faint glow, painting Clara, Eli, and Rosie in hues of amber and shadow. Cole sat by the door, his back against the wall, revolver across his lap. His eyes flicked between the fire and the darkness outside, where snow fell in lazy drifts. Too quiet, he thought. Quiet means trouble. Clara had wrapped the children in the single blanket, their small forms curled together on a bed of broken crates. Rosie slept, her rag doll clutched tight, her breath soft and even. Eli sat upright, his knees pulled to his chest, watching the flames. The boy hadn't spoken much, but his eyes followed Cole, sharp and curious, like he was piecing together a puzzle. "You should sleep," Cole said, his voice low to avoid waking Rosie. "Long night ahead." Eli glanced at him, his jaw set. "I ain't tired," he said, though his eyelids drooped. "Pa taught me to stay awake when there's danger." Cole's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. Kid's got more than grit, he's got pride. Your pa teach you how to spot danger too? Eli nodded. Said to listen for what ain't there, like birds going quiet or wind stoppin' sudden. Cole's grip tightened on the revolver. Smart man, your pa. He tilted his head, listening. The wind was softer now, but the silence beneath it felt heavy, like the world was holding its breath. What's it sound like now? He asked. Eli frowned, his brow furrowing. Like nothing, just snow. Exactly, Cole thought, but he didn't say it. Instead, he stood, brushing frost from his duster. Keep that fire going. I'm checking outside. Clara stirred, her eyes opening. She'd been dozing, her head resting against the wall, but now she sat up, alert. Is something wrong? Her voice was steady, but there was an edge to it, like she already knew the answer. Just being careful, Cole said, avoiding her gaze. He stepped outside, the cold hitting him like a fist. The snow had slowed to a whisper, the air thick with the scent of pine and ice. Ghost stood tethered under a sagging lean-to, her ears twitching. Cole scanned the horizon, his breath clouding in the moonlight. The world was still, just a snap, a branch, maybe, or a boot on snow. His hand went to his revolver, slow and deliberate. He waited, eyes narrowing. Nothing moved. No shadows, no tracks, just the endless white. Maybe it's nothing, he told himself, but his gut said otherwise. He'd learned long ago to trust that feeling. It had kept him alive when others weren't so lucky. Back inside, Clara was on her feet, brushing sawdust from her skirt. What did you hear? She asked, her voice low so the children wouldn't catch it. Nothing clear, Cole admitted, but something's out there. I can feel it. She nodded, her lips pressing into a thin line. The driver, he said something before he died, about men following us. I thought he was delirious, but... Cole's eyes flicked to hers. What men? She hesitated, glancing at Eli, who was still tending the fire. He didn't say much, just, they want the papers. Kept muttering about papers like they were worth more than his life. Cole's jaw tightened. Papers. He'd seen men die for less. Land deeds, gold claims, secrets scrawled on parchment. You got any papers like that? Clara shook her head. No. We were traveling light, just clothes, some books for the school I was to start. My husband, her voice caught, and she steadied herself. He handled our affairs. If there was something, he never told me. Cole studied her, searching for a lie. Her eyes were clear, steady, but there was pain there, deep and raw. She's telling the truth? Or thinks she is. We'll check the wreckage come morning. If there's something worth killing for, we need to know. She nodded, her hands clasped tight. Thank you, Cole, for staying. He turned away, uncomfortable with the gratitude. Ain't staying? He said gruffly. Just getting you through the night. But as he settled back by the door, he felt her watching him. Not with fear or pity, but something else. Something that made his chest ache in a way he hadn't felt in years. He pushed it down, focusing on the fire, the shadows, anything but her. The night stretched on, the fire crackling softly. Eli finally dozed off, his head resting on Clara's shoulder. Rosie murmured in her sleep, something about flowers and sunshine. Clara hummed a lullaby, her voice barely above a whisper, and the sound hit Cole like a memory he didn't want. Keep your distance, he told himself. They ain't yours. But then Eli stirred, his voice groggy. Mr. Cole? You know how to make a fire like this back home? Cole glanced at the boy, surprised. Reckon I do, he said. Ain't hard, just takes patience. Will you show me? Eli's eyes were bright, even in the dim light. Pa used to say a man's gotta know fire, or he ain't a man. Clara's hand tightened on Eli's shoulder, but she didn't hush him. Cole hesitated, then nodded. All right, kid, watch close. He grabbed a splintered piece of crate, showing Eli how to angle it into the stove without smothering the flames. Slow, he said. Fire's like a horse. Rush it, and it'll buck you off. Eli mimicked him, his movements careful but sure. When the wood caught, a small grin broke across his face. I did it, he said, almost to himself. You did, Cole said, and for a moment the shack felt warmer than the fire could account for. He caught Clara's eye and smiled. A small, tired thing, but real. Don't get used to it, he thought, turning back to the door. Hours passed, the fire burning low. Cole stayed awake, his revolver never far. Clara dozed again, her head against the wall, the children nestled close. The shack was quiet, save for the snap of embers and the faint whistle of wind. Then, a sound, faint but unmistakable. Hoofbeats, slow and steady, muffled by the snow. Cole was on his feet in an instant, revolver in hand. He peered through a crack in the wall, his heart pounding. The moonlight caught a shadow moving through the trees, then another. Horses, at least two, maybe more. They found us. He turned to Clara, who was awake now, her eyes wide. "Stay low," he whispered. "Don't make a sound." She nodded, pulling the children close. Eli's hand went to the knife at his belt, a small blade Cole hadn't noticed before. Kids ready to fight. Damn fool. Cole motioned for him to stay put, then crept to the door, easing it open just enough to see. The hoofbeats stopped. Silence fell, heavy and thick. Cole's breath fogged in the cold, his finger resting on the trigger. "Come on then," he thought. "Let's see who you are." The shack was a cage of shadows, the fire's glow barely holding back the dark. Cole crouched by the door, revolver steady in his hand, his breath shallow to keep the fog from betraying him. Outside, the snow had stopped, leaving the world in a hush so deep it felt like the earth itself was listening. The hoofbeats had faded, but the silence was worse, thick with the promise of trouble. "They're out there," Cole thought, his eyes scanning the tree line through a crack in the wall. "Waitin'. Watchin'." Inside, Clara clutched Eli and Rosie close, her face pale but resolute. Eli's small knife gleamed in his hand, his jaw set like he was ready to storm the night himself. Rosie whimpered, her doll pressed to her chest, and Clara hushed her gently, her eyes locked on Cole. "She's waitin' for me to fix this," he thought, and the weight of it settled in his gut like a stone. He'd carried that weight before, and it had crushed him. He motioned for Clara to stay low, then eased the door open a fraction wider. The cold rushed in, sharp as a blade. Moonlight spilled across the snow, turning it into a sea of silver, broken only by the black shapes of pines. Then he saw them, 3 figures on horseback, just beyond the trees, their silhouettes stark against the snow. One held a rifle, its barrel catching the light. Not bandits, Cole thought. Too careful, too patient. Bandits would have rushed the shack by now, greedy for blood or loot. These men were hunting. Cole's mind raced, piecing together the driver's last words. Papers, men following. Whatever Clara was carrying, knowingly or not, was worth killing for. He glanced back at her, her face half lit by the dying fire. "Those papers," he whispered. "You sure you got nothing?" Clara shook her head, her voice barely audible. "I told you, Cole, I don't." A voice cut through the night, low and cold, like a blade drawn slow across a whetstone. "Mercer," it called, echoing off the canyon walls. "Ain't no use hidin'. I know you're in there." Cole froze, his blood turning to ice. He knew that voice, hadn't heard it in years, but it was burned into his memory like a brand. Silas Creed. The man who'd ridden beside him in the war, who'd laughed over whiskey and corpses, who'd called him brother before Cole turned his back on that life. Creed. The name tasted like ash. Clara's eyes widened. "Who is that?" she hissed. Cole didn't answer. He couldn't. His past was out there, wearing a black hat and a killer's grin. He tightened his grip on the revolver, his knuckles white. "Shoulda known he'd find me. Men like Creed don't let go." "Come on out, Mercy," Creed called again, his voice mocking now. "Got business to settle. You and that widow got something that don't belong to you." Clara's breath caught. "Widow," she whispered. "How does he know me?" Cole's jaw clenched. "He's been watching longer than I thought." He turned to her, his voice low and urgent. "Stay here. Keep the kids quiet. If I don't come back, there's a trapdoor under the crates, leads to a crawl space. Hide." Her hand shot out, grabbing his arm. "You're not going out there alone." He shook her off, gentle but firm. "Ain't a choice, ma'am. That's Silas Creed. He don't talk for nothing. He's here to kill." Her eyes searched his, sharp and unyielding. "Then why's he calling you Mercy?" The question hit like a bullet. Cole's throat tightened, memories clawing their way up, screams in a burning town like blood on his hands, the faces of men he'd failed. "Because I was a fool once," he said, his voice rough. "And fools get names they don't deserve." He stepped outside before she could press further, the door creaking shut behind him. The cold bit deep, but he barely felt it. His world narrowed to the 3 figures in the snow. Creed at the center, his black coat flapping like a vulture's wings. The other 2 flanked him, rifles ready, their faces shadowed under wide-brimmed hats. Cole stood tall, his revolver loose at his side, the wind tugging at his duster. "Well, damn," Creed said, his voice carrying a grin Cole couldn't see. "Mercy himself. Thought you'd be dead by now, Cole. All them ghosts weighing you down." "What do you want, Silas?" Cole's voice was steady, but inside his heart pounded. "He knows me. Knows what I did. Ain't nothing here but a woman and her kids. Creed laughed, a low, guttural sound. Don't play dumb. You got them papers. Railroad's paying good money to see 'em burned, and you know me, I don't leave loose ends. Cole's mind raced. Railroad, papers. Clara's husband must have stumbled onto something big, land deeds maybe, or proof of dirty deals. The railroad was swallowing the West, and men like Creed were its teeth. I ain't got your papers, Cole said, and you ain't touching that family. Creed leaned forward in his saddle, his eyes glinting in the moonlight. Family, huh? You gone soft, Mercy? Last I saw, you didn't care who burned, long as you got out clean. The words cut deeper than the cold. Cole's hand twitched, itching to raise the revolver, but he held steady. Not yet. Times change, he said. You should try it. Creed's grin faded. Times don't change men like us. We're carved from the same stone. You just forgot. He nodded to his men, who raised their rifles. Last chance, Cole. Hand over the papers, or I burn that shack with everyone in it. Inside, Clara listened, her heart hammering. She'd heard Creed's words, heard the name Mercy. She'd read about him years ago, in a newspaper back east, a Confederate scout, blamed for a raid that left a town in ashes. Women, children, all dead. The papers called him a monster, then a savior, then nothing at all. Is that who he is? She thought, her hands trembling as she held Rosie close. But then she remembered his eyes, the way he'd looked at her children, the way he'd stayed when he could have ridden off. He's not that man. Not anymore. Eli whispered, Ma, we gotta help him. No, she said, her voice firm. We stay here. He told us to. But Eli was already moving, creeping to the crates, his knife in hand. He's out there 'cause of us. I ain't letting him die. Ellie, Clara hissed, but he was too quick, slipping toward the trapdoor. Rosie clung to her, tears in her eyes, and Clara's resolve cracked. She grabbed the broken lantern, its jagged edge a makeshift weapon, and followed her son. If we're in this, we're in it together. Outside, Cole faced Creed, the air thick with tension. You want me, Silas, you got me, he said. Leave the others out of it. Creed chuckled, shaking his head. You don't get to make deals, Mercy. Not this time. He raised a hand, and his men cocked their rifles, the sound sharp in the silence. Then, a creak. The shack's door swung open, and Clara stepped out, lantern in hand, Eli at her side. Cole's heart sank. Damn it, woman. Get back inside, he barked. Clara ignored him, her eyes locked on Creed. You're after papers, she said, her voice clear despite the fear. I don't know what they are, but I'll find them. Just let my children go. Creed's gaze shifted to her, his smile cold. Brave lady, but bravery don't pay debts. He tilted his head, studying her. You got till dawn to hand him over, or I start with the kids. Cole stepped forward, his revolver half raised. You touch them, Silas, and you're a dead man. Creed's eyes flicked back to him, amused. Ain't no use hiding, Mercer, he said, his voice a low growl. Not from me. He turned his horse, his men following, and melted into the trees. The silence returned, heavier than before. Cole spun to Clara, his voice tight. What the hell were you thinking? I was thinking I'm not helpless, she snapped, her eyes blazing. And neither is my son. Eli stood tall, his knife still in hand. I wasn't gonna let you fight alone, Mr. Cole. Cole stared at them, anger and something else, pride maybe, warring in his chest. They're fighting for you, you fool. He shook his head, holstering his revolver. Get inside. We got work to do. As they retreated to the shack, the fire's glow felt colder, the shadows deeper. Creed was out there, waiting. And Cole knew one truth above all. The past didn't just follow you. It hunted you. The shack was a fragile sanctuary, its walls trembling under the weight of the night. The fire in the stove had dwindled to embers, casting a faint red glow across Clara, Eli, and Rosie, who huddled together on the floor. Cole stood by the door, his revolver drawn, eyes fixed on the darkness beyond the cracked boards. Silas Creed's ultimatum hung in the air like smoke. Dawn. The word was a blade, sharp and cold, promising blood if they didn't deliver. Clara's hands shook as she rummaged through the salvaged wreckage of their belongings. A few clothes, a battered book of poems, a tin of beans. No papers, no deeds. Nothing worth the death that hunted them. There's nothing here, she whispered, her voice tight with frustration. If my husband had something, he never told me. Cole didn't look at her. His gaze stayed on the night, where the snow lay still under a moon too bright for comfort. Creed don't make mistakes, he thought. If he's here, those papers exist. Keep looking, he said gruffly. Check every seam, every pocket. Men like him don't chase ghosts. Eli knelt beside his mother, tearing open a canvas satchel. Pa always kept his important stuff hidden, he said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. Said you don't let the world see what matters. Clara paused, her hand resting on a torn shawl. Hidden, she murmured. She grabbed the shawl, running her fingers along its edges. Her breath caught as she felt a lump, something stiff sewn into the hem. She tore at the stitching with her nails, pulling free a small bundle of folded parchment, yellowed and creased. She unfolded it, her eyes scanning the words. Land deeds, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, for a valley west of Laramie, signed over to the railroad. Cole's head snapped toward her. Let me see. He crossed the room in 2 strides, taking the papers. His eyes flicked over the text, legal jargon, names of men he didn't know, and a map scrawled in faded ink. Railroad land, worth killin' for. Your husband, he said, his voice low. He die natural, or did someone help him along? Clara's face paled, but her eyes burned. He was sick, she said. Fever took him, but he was scared before he died. Kept saying we had to leave, that men were coming. She swallowed hard. I thought it was the fever talking. It wasn't, Cole said, folding the papers and tucking them into his duster. These are why Creed's here. Railroad wants this land, and they don't care who's in the way. Rosie stirred, her small voice breaking the tension. Are those bad men gonna hurt us, Ma? Clara pulled her close, stroking her hair. No, sweetheart, we're safe here. But her eyes met Cole's, and the lie hung heavy between them. He turned back to the door, his mind racing. Dawn's comin'. Creed won't wait. He checked his revolver, 6 shots, plus a dozen rounds in his belt. Enough for a fight, but not a war. 3 men out there, maybe more. And wolves. He'd heard them earlier, their howls cutting through the wind. The West was never short on predators. Eli stood, his knife in hand. I can fight, Mr. Cole. Pa taught me how to use this. Cole eyed the boy, his small frame dwarfed by the weight of his words. You're brave, kid, he said. But fightin' ain't about bravery. It's about livin'. You stay with your ma. Eli's face fell, but he nodded, clutching the knife tighter. Clara watched them, her expression unreadable. What's your plan, Cole? She asked. Run or fight? He didn't answer right away. Run, and they'll hunt us. Fight, and we might die anyway. He'd faced worse odds, but never with a family at his back. They ain't your family, his mind hissed, but the thought felt hollow. We hold till dawn, he said finally. If Creed wants these papers, he'll have to come get 'em. The hours crawled by, the shack filled with the snap of embers and the creak of wood. Cole stayed by the door, his ears straining for any sound. Clara and Eli searched the wreckage again, hoping for anything useful, a weapon, food, anything to tip the scales. Rosie drew pictures in the dust, humming softly, her innocence a stark contrast to the tension choking the room. Then it came, a flicker of light outside, not moonlight but fire. A torch, bobbing in the dark, then another. Cole's heart sank. They're here. He motioned for Clara to get down, his voice a harsh whisper. Stay low, now. She grabbed the children, pulling them behind the crates. Cole eased the door open, revolver raised, and stepped into the snow. The cold hit him like a slap, but he ignored it, his eyes locked on the torches. 3 men, just as he'd thought, their figures sharp against the white. Creed stood in the center, a torch in one hand, a rifle in the other. His men flanked him, their faces shadowed but their guns glinting. Time's up, Mercy, Creed called, his voice carrying a mocking edge. Papers or we burn you out. Cole's grip tightened on his revolver. Ain't got 'em, he lied, stalling. You're wasting your time, Silas. Creed laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Wastin' time's your game, Cole, always was. You think you can save 'em? You couldn't save your own men. The words were a knife, twisting deep. Cole's vision blurred, memories of fire and screams flooding back. Not now, he thought, forcing them down. He raised his revolver, aiming at Creed's chest. Last chance, Silas. Ride off, or you're done. Creed's smile vanished. He raised his torch and in a single motion, hurled it at the shack. It arced through the air, landing on the sagging roof with a thud. The dry timbers caught fast, flames licking upward, smoke curling into the night. Cole fired, the shot cracking like thunder, but Creed was already moving, his men diving for cover. Inside, Clara screamed, Cole! As the fire spread, the walls crackling. She grabbed Rosie, pulling her toward the trapdoor, but Eli broke free, running for the door. I'm helping him, he shouted. Eli, no! Clara lunged after him, but he was already outside, his knife flashing in the firelight. Cole spun, cursing as one of Creed's men charged from the shadows, a blade in hand. Cole fired again, the man dropping with a grunt, but another was on him, tackling him into the snow. The revolver flew from his hand, skidding across the ice. Clara burst from the shack, Rosie in her arms, and saw the chaos. Cole grappling in the snow, Eli facing a man twice his size, the shack burning behind them. Without thinking, she grabbed a rifle from the wreckage, one the driver had left. Her hands shook, but her aim was steady. "Get away from my son," she shouted, firing into the air. The sound froze the man, and Eli dove, slashing at his leg. The man howled, stumbling back. Cole rolled free, snatching his revolver from the snow. He fired twice, dropping the second man, but Creed was gone, vanished into the dark. The shack was an inferno now, flames roaring into the sky, the heat searing even from a distance. Cole grabbed Eli, pulling him to Clara. "We gotta move," he said, his voice hoarse. "They'll be back." Clara clutched Rosie, her eyes wide with fear but blazing with resolve. "Where?" she asked, the rifle still in her hands. "Anywhere but here," Cole said, scanning the trees. The fire lit the night, casting long shadows, but Creed was out there, waiting. He won't stop. Cole looked at Clara, at Eli's defiant face, at Rosie's trembling form. "They're counting on you. Don't fail 'em." He took a breath, the smoke burning his lungs. "We run together," he said, "or we die apart." The shack burned behind them, a roaring pyre against the Wyoming night, its flames licking the sky as if to devour the stars. Cole led the way, his boots crunching through snow, Ghost's reins in one hand, revolver in the other. Clara followed, Rosie clinging to her back, the girl's small arms wrapped tight around her neck. Eli kept pace, his knife sheathed but his eyes darting to the shadows, searching for Silas Creed or his men. The air reeked of smoke and pine, the cold biting deeper with every step. "Keep moving," Cole thought, his breath fogging in the moonlight. "Stop, and you're dead." The forest was a maze of ice and shadow, the trees looming like sentinels. The fire's glow faded behind them, but its heat lingered in Cole's mind, a reminder of how close they'd come to dying. His left arm throbbed, a gash from the fight seeping blood through his sleeve. He ignored it, focusing on the path ahead, a narrow trail winding toward a frozen river he'd crossed days before. "If we reach it, we got a chance. If not..." He didn't finish the thought. Clara's voice broke the silence, low and urgent. "How far to Laramie?" "Too far," Cole said, not turning. 10 miles, maybe more. We ain't making it tonight." He glanced at her, her face pale but determined, Rosie's head buried in her shoulder. "There's a ravine up ahead, caves along the riverbank. We hole up there till dawn." "And then?" Clara's eyes met his, searching for a plan he didn't have. "Then we keep moving," he said, his voice gruff. "Creed's got horses, he'll track us, but he won't risk the river in the dark." Eli piped up, his breath puffing in clouds. "What if he does?" Cole looked at the boy, his small frame shivering but unbowed. "Kid's got more guts than sense." "Then we fight," he said simply. "You ready for that?" Eli nodded, his jaw tight. "I ain't scared." "You should be," Cole muttered, but there was no heat in it. He turned back to the trail, his eyes scanning the trees. The silence was wrong, too heavy, like the world was holding its breath. "Creed's out there. He don't quit." The trail sloped downward, the snow thinning where the wind had scoured it clean. Ghost snorted, her hooves slipping on ice, and Cole steadied her, his wounded arms screaming with the effort. Clara noticed, her gaze flicking to the blood staining his sleeve. "You're hurt," she said, her voice sharp with concern. "It's nothing," he lied, pulling his duster to cover it. "Keep walking." She didn't argue, but her eyes lingered, and he felt the weight of her worry. "Don't look at me like that," he thought. "I ain't worth it." But the thought felt hollow, like a habit he didn't believe anymore. Clara wasn't just a widow in need of saving. She was a force, carrying her children through hell with a rifle in her hands. And Eli, that boy with his father's knife, was ready to die for his family. They're worth it, Cole realized, and the thought scared him more than Creed ever could. The river came into view, a ribbon of ice glinting under the moon. The ravine rose on the far side, its cliffs pockmarked with shallow caves. Cole pointed to a narrow gap in the rock, barely visible. "There," he said, "we rest, then move at first light." They crossed the river, the ice creaking under their weight. Cole went first, testing each step, Ghost following close. Clara held Rosie tight, her boots slipping but her balance steady. Eli brought up the rear, his eyes on the forest behind them. Halfway across, a howl split the night, a wolf, close and hungry. Rosie whimpered, and Clara hushed her, her voice soft but firm. "It's just a wolf, sweetheart. It's not coming for us." Not yet, Cole thought, his hand on his revolver. Wolves were trouble, but men were worse. He scanned the tree line, his heart pounding. "Where are you, Silas?" They reached the cave, a shallow hollow carved into the cliff. It was cold and damp, but it offered shelter, its mouth hidden by a jut of rock. Cole tethered Ghost to a scrub pine, then helped Clara settle the children inside. Eli gathered sticks, his hands shaking from cold, and Cole showed him how to build a small fire, shielding it with stones to hide the glow. The flames caught, weak but warm, and Rosie curled up beside them, her doll in her lap. Clara sat across from Cole, her rifle propped against the wall. "Those papers," she said quietly, her eyes on the fire, "they're why my husband died, aren't they?" Cole nodded, pulling the deeds from his duster. "Railroads claiming land that ain't theirs. Your husband must have known too much." He paused, weighing his words. "Creed's their dog? He cleans up messes." Clara's face hardened, grief and anger mixing in her eyes. "He was a good man," she said, her voice breaking. "He wanted a new life for us, not this." Cole looked away, the firelight dancing on the cave walls. "Good men die. Always do." "I'm sorry," he said, the words feeling inadequate. "But we ain't done yet. We'll get you to Laramie." She studied him, her gaze piercing. "Why are you doing this, Cole? You could have left us." He didn't answer right away, his mind tangled in memories of a town burning, of screams he couldn't stop, of a life spent running from both. "Because I'm tired of walking away," he said finally, his voice low. "And because your kids deserve better than I got." Before Clara could respond, a crack echoed through the ravine, a branch snapping, too loud for the wind. Cole was on his feet, revolver drawn, his body shielding the cave's mouth. "Stay here," he whispered, stepping into the dark. The river gleamed below, its ice a mirror for the moon. Cole crouched, his eyes scanning the shadows. Then he saw it, a figure moving along the riverbank, rifle in hand. One of Creed's men, scouting. Cole's arm throbbed, his vision blurring from blood loss, but he steadied himself, aiming. One shot. Make it count. Before he could fire, a small shape darted past him. Eli, his knife flashing. The boy lunged at the man, slashing at his leg. The man cursed, stumbling, and Cole fired, the shot echoing as the man fell, clutching his chest. But the sound drew others. Hoofbeats thundered, and two more figures appeared, Creed's voice barking orders. "Run!" Cole shouted, grabbing Eli and shoving him toward the cave. Clara was already there, rifle raised, firing into the dark. The shots bought them seconds, but Creed's men were closing in, their bullets chipping the rock around them. Cole's strength faltered, his arm heavy, the world tilting. He stumbled, falling to one knee, his revolver slipping from his hand. Not now, he thought, his vision darkening. Clara's voice cut through the haze, sharp and desperate. "Cole?" Eli was there, small hands grabbing Cole's arm, pulling him up. "Get up, Mr. Cole," the boy shouted, his voice cracking. "We need you." The words hit like a spark, igniting something in Cole's chest. He staggered to his feet, snatching his revolver, and fired blindly, driving Creed's men back. Clara grabbed Rosie, and they ran, the cave abandoned, the fire left to die. They stumbled along the riverbank, the cold numbing their limbs, the night swallowing their tracks. Cole collapsed beside the frozen river, his breath ragged, blood pooling in the snow. Clara knelt beside him, tearing a strip from her shawl to bind his wound. "You're not dying on us," she said, her voice fierce. "You hear me?" He looked at her, at Eli's determined face, at Rosie's tear-streaked cheeks. "They're counting on you." "Not this time," he muttered, his voice barely audible. "I ain't leaving them." The frozen river lay behind them, its ice gleaming like a blade under the fading moon. Cole stumbled through the snow, his arm throbbing beneath Clara's makeshift bandage, each step a battle against the darkness creeping into his vision. Clara led the way, Rosie clinging to her back. The girl's small hands knotted in her mother's shawl. Eli stayed close to Cole, his eyes darting to the shadows, his knife still drawn. The forest was quiet now, the gunfire and hoofbeats swallowed by the night, but Cole knew better than to trust the silence. Creed's still out there, he thought, his breath ragged. He don't stop. They'd been running for hours, the cold gnawing at their bones, the trail winding toward a speck of a town Cole remembered passing days before. Red Pine, a cluster of shacks and a saloon, barely a dot on the map. It wasn't Laramie, but it was shelter. Maybe safety. If the townsfolk weren't bought by the railroad. If, Cole thought grimly. The West didn't breed kindness, only survival. Clara's voice broke through his haze, low and steady. How much farther? Cole squinted at the horizon, where the first gray light of dawn smudged the sky. Half a mile, maybe, he said, his voice rough. Look for smoke. Town's got a smithy. Fire's always burning. He nodded, adjusting Rosie on her back. The girl was silent now, her face buried in Clara's shoulder, her doll lost somewhere in the snow. Eli gripped his knife tighter, his small frame tense. They coming after us, Mr. Cole? He asked. Count on it, Cole said, his eyes scanning the trees. But we got a head start. Creed's men are hurt, same as me. Slows 'em down. Eli's jaw set, but his voice wavered. You're bleedin' bad. Cole glanced at his arm, the bandage soaked through. Been worse, he lied, forcing a grim smile. Keep moving, kid. You're doing fine. They reached Red Pine as the sky turned slate, the town emerging from the snow like a ghost. A dozen buildings, maybe less, huddled along a muddy street, their roofs heavy with frost. Smoke curled from a chimney, the smithy, just as Cole had said. The saloon's sign creaked in the wind, its paint peeling. No one stirred, the windows dark, the air thick with the scent of coal and damp wood. Cole led them to a livery stable at the edge of town, its doors sagging but intact. He pushed Ghost inside, the mare snorting softly, and helped Clara and the children through. The stable smelled of hay and leather, a faint warmth lingering from the animals inside. Cole collapsed against a stall, his breath shallow, the world tilting again. Clara knelt beside him, her hands quick but gentle as she checked his wound. You need a doctor, she said, her voice firm. This is beyond me. No doctor here, Cole muttered, his eyes half closed. Red Pine's too small. Just let me rest a spell. You rest, you die, she snapped, her eyes blazing. She tore another strip from her shawl, wrapping it tight around his arm. Stay awake, Cole. For us. He met her gaze, her face sharp in the dim light. For us. The words hit like a spark, pulling him back from the edge. He nodded, forcing himself upright. All right, ma'am, you win. Eli scouted the stable, finding a bucket of water and a rag. Clara soaked the rag, cleaning Cole's wound as best she could, her hands steady despite the blood. Rosie curled up in a pile of hay, her eyes heavy but watching. Mr. Cole gonna be okay, Ma? She whispered. He will, Clara said, her voice soft but certain. He's too stubborn to quit. Cole's mouth twitched, almost a smile. That's the truth, he said, his voice faint. He leaned back, the pain dulling as Clara worked. Her touch was careful, her fingers brushing his skin, and for a moment he let himself feel it. The warmth, the care, something he hadn't known in years. Don't get used to it, he thought, but the warning felt weaker now, like a habit breaking. Eli returned, his face grim. Found something, he said, holding up a small satchel from the stable's corner. Inside was a loaf of stale bread and a tin of salve, likely for horses but better than nothing. Think it's enough? It'll do, Clara said, taking the salve and spreading it on Cole's wound. The sting made him hiss, but he didn't pull away. She looked at him, her eyes soft but searching. You knew that man, Creed, from before. Cole's jaw tightened. He'd hoped she'd let it go, but Clara wasn't the type to leave stones unturned. Yeah, he said, his voice low. Rode together in the war. He was like me once. Worse, maybe. Mercy, she said, the word heavy. That's what he called you. Why? He looked away, the stable shadows dancing in his vision. Was a scout, he said. Led men, saved some, lost more. One night I made a call, bad one. Town burned, folks died, women, kids. His voice cracked and he swallowed hard. Papers called me a hero for saving a few. Then they called me a butcher. Truth's somewhere in between. Clara's hands paused, her eyes locked on his. You're not that man anymore, she said, her voice quiet but firm. I see you, Cole. You're here, bleeding for us. That's who you are. He shook his head, the weight of her words too much. You don't know me, Clara. Not really. I know enough, she said, tying off the bandage. You stayed. That's more than most. The stable fell silent, save for the creak of the roof and Ghost's soft snorts. Rosie dozed off, her small form curled in the hay. Eli sat by the door, his knife in his lap, keeping watch like a soldier. Cole watched them, his chest tight. They're fighting for you, same as you're fighting for them. The thought was a lifeline, fragile but real. Clara sat back, her hands stained with his blood. What now? She asked. The town? Will they help? Cole snorted, the sound weak but bitter. Red Pine's a railroad town. Half the folks here are bought, the other half scared. We'll get no help from the law. Deputy Hartley's a coward, and the marshal's a day's ride away. Then we're on our own, Clara said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. Not alone, Eli said, looking up from the door. We got each other. Cole met the boy's gaze, and something shifted in him. A crack in the walls he'd built. Yeah, kid, he said softly. We do. The first rays of dawn crept through the stable's cracks, painting the hay in gold. Cole forced himself to his feet, his arms screaming but his resolve firm. We move at first light, he said. Creed's comin', and we ain't waitin' for him. Clara nodded, gathering Rosie in her arms. Eli stood, his knife ready, his eyes bright with purpose. Cole checked his revolver, the weight familiar, grounding. He stepped to the stable door, peering out at the quiet town. The street was empty, the snow untouched, but he felt eyes on him, Creed's or the town's or both. He turned to Clara, his voice low. When this is over, you get to Laramie. Start that school. Give these kids a life. And you? She asked, her gaze piercing. He didn't answer, just pushed the door open and stepped into the dawn, his shadow long and sharp. One last fight, he thought, saddling Ghost. Then maybe I'm done running. Dawn broke over the Wyoming wilderness, a pale gold light spilling across the snow-laden canyon. The air was sharp, the kind of cold that burned the lungs, but the blizzard had passed, leaving the world still and silent. Cole Mercer stood at the edge of Red Pine, his duster flapping in the faint wind, his revolver heavy in his hand. His left arm throbbed beneath Clara's bandage, the pain a dull roar, but he pushed it down. No time for weakness. Silas Creed was coming, and this time there'd be no running. Clara and the children waited in the livery stable, hidden among the hay and shadows. Cole had made them promise to stay put, to run for the river if things went south. Clara's eyes had burned with protest, but she'd nodded, her rifle clutched tight, Rosie and Eli at her side. They're counting on you, Cole thought, his jaw tight. Don't fail 'em. The town was quiet, its shacks and saloons shuddered against the cold. The smithy's chimney puffed smoke, but no one stirred. Red Pine was a coward's town, bought or broken by the railroad, and Cole knew better than to expect help. Deputy Hartley was probably hiding under his desk, and Marshal Wyatt was too far to matter. Just you and Creed, he thought, his boots crunching on the snow-dusted street. Like it was always gonna be. He moved to the canyon's edge, where the trail dipped into a narrow pass, cliffs rising on either side. A good place for a stand, too tight for horses, too open for an ambush. He checked his revolver, 5 shots left, plus a handful of rounds in his belt. Enough, he told himself, though his gut whispered otherwise. Creed wasn't just a killer. He was a ghost from Cole's past, a mirror of the man he might have become. The sun climbed higher, painting the snow in shades of fire. Then he heard it. Hoofbeats, slow and deliberate, echoing off the canyon walls. 3 horses, maybe 4. Cole's hand tightened on his revolver, his heart steady despite the pain pulsing in his arm. Here we go. Silas Creed rode into view, his black coat stark against the white, his hat low over eyes that gleamed like polished steel. 2 men flanked him, rifles ready, their faces hard and unshaven. Cole recognized one, Jeb, a weasel of a man who'd ridden with them in the war, always quick with a knife. The other was new, a stranger with a scar across his cheek. 3 against 1, Cole thought. Fair enough. Creed reined his horse to a stop, his smile cold and sharp. Mornin' Mercy, he said, his voice carrying that old mocking lilt. You look like hell. Feel worse, Cole said, his tone flat. You here for the papers, Silas, or just to talk? Creed laughed, a low guttural sound. Papers first, your head's a bonus. He leaned forward in his saddle, his eyes narrowing. You think hiding that widow and her brats makes you a hero? You're still the man who burned Jasper's mill. Ain't no washing that blood off. The words hit like a fist, but Cole didn't flinch. Jasper's mill, 10 years ago, a raid gone wrong, innocents dead because of his orders. He'd carried it every day since, a weight heavier than any wound. I ain't that man no more, he said, his voice steady. You should have moved on too. Creed's smile faded. You think killin' for love makes you clean? He asked, his voice low, venomous. You're still a killer, Mercy, just like me. Cole's grip tightened, his finger brushing the trigger. No, he said, the word quiet but firm. It makes me human. Creed's hand twitched, and the world exploded into motion. Jeb raised his rifle, but Cole was faster, his revolver barking twice. Jeb fell, blood blooming on his chest, his horse rearing. The scarred man fired, the bullet grazing Cole's shoulder, and Cole stumbled, his wounded arm screaming. He fired again, the shot going wide, and Creed charged, his own revolver drawn. The canyon rang with gunfire, the sound bouncing off the cliffs like thunder. Cole dove behind a boulder, snow spraying around him. Creed's bullets chipped the rock, sending shards flying. He's playing with me, Cole thought, reloading with shaking hands. Wants me to beg. But he wouldn't. Not for Creed. Not for anyone. From the stable, Clara watched through a crack in the wall, her heart pounding. Eli gripped his knife, his face pale but set. "We gotta help him, Ma," he whispered. "No," Clara said, her voice sharp. "He told us to stay." But her hands tightened on the rifle, her eyes locked on the canyon. Cole was out there, bleeding, fighting for them. "He's not dying alone." Creed's voice echoed again, taunting. "You can't save him, Mercy. You never could." Cole peered from behind the boulder, his vision blurring. Blood soaked his sleeve, his strength fading. One shot, he thought, lining up Creed in his sights. But before he could fire, a small figure darted from the shadows. Eli, his knife flashing as he lunged at the scarred man. The man cursed, swinging his rifle, but Eli was quick, slashing at his hand. The rifle fell, and Clara was there, her own rifle raised, firing a single shot that dropped the man in the snow. Cole's heart stopped. "Damn it, kid." He stumbled forward, firing to cover them, but Creed was on him, tackling him into the snow. The revolver flew from Cole's hand, skidding across the ice. Creed's fist slammed into his jaw, stars bursting in his vision. "You're done, Mercy," Creed hissed, his knife gleaming as he raised it. But Clara was there, her rifle swinging like a club cracking against Creed's skull. He staggered, blood streaming down his face, and Cole rolled free, snatching his revolver. He stood, swaying, and faced Creed, who was back on his feet, knife in hand, his eyes wild. "This ends now," Cole said, his voice hoarse. He raised his revolver, but his hand shook, the world tilting. Not yet. He steadied himself, the canyon silent save for the wind's low moan. Creed laughed, spitting blood. "Go on, Mercy. Pull the trigger. Prove you're me." Cole's finger tightened, but Clara's voice cut through, soft but clear. "You're not him, Cole. You never were." He looked at her, at Eli's defiant face, at Rosie peeking from the stable door. "They believe in you." He lowered the revolver, just a fraction. "Walk away, Silas," he said, "last chance." Creed lunged, his knife flashing, but Cole was ready. He sidestepped, grabbing Creed's arm and twisting until the knife fell. Creed roared, swinging wildly, but Cole drove his fist into Creed's jaw, sending him sprawling. The canyon fell silent, the snow stained red. Cole stood over him, revolver aimed at Creed's chest. "I ain't you," he said, his voice low. "Not anymore." Creed grinned, blood on his teeth. "You'll always be me." A single shot rang out, not from Cole but from the cliffs above. Creed's body jerked, then went still, his eyes wide and empty. Cole spun, revolver raised, but saw no one, just the echo of the shot fading into the wind. Someone else out there, he thought, his heart pounding. Railroad? Or something worse? Clara grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "Cole, we have to go." He nodded, his eyes still on the cliffs. The storm was gone, the sun spilling gold across the valley, but the warmth felt distant, like a promise unkept. He looked at Clara, at Eli's knife still clenched in his hand, at Rosie running toward them. "Let's move," he said, his voice steady despite the pain. They turned from the canyon, the bodies left behind, the snow swallowing their tracks. It ain't over, Cole thought, but for the first time he felt something new, not just survival, but purpose. The Wyoming valley bloomed with the first breath of spring, the snow melting into streams that carved paths through the greening earth. Red pine was behind them, its silent streets and bloodied canyon fading into memory. Cole Mercer rode Ghost at a steady walk, his arm still bandaged but healing, the pain a quiet reminder of the fight that had changed everything. Clara walked beside him, her shawl replaced by a new one, bartered from a trader in Laramie. Eli led a borrowed mule, his knife sheathed, but his eyes bright with purpose. Rosie skipped ahead, her laughter ringing like a bell, chasing wildflowers that dotted the trail. Laramie was no paradise, just a dusty town with ambitions bigger than its borders, but it was safe. The railroad's shadow loomed, but the deeds Clara had carried, proof of stolen land, had been delivered to Marshal Wyatt, a gray-haired lawman with a limp and a conscience. The papers were enough to stir trouble for the railroad, maybe enough to keep other families safe. For now, Cole thought, his eyes on the horizon. Men like Creed always got replacements. They'd settled in a small homestead just outside town, a weathered cabin with a sagging barn and a view of the mountains. Clara had claimed it for her schoolhouse, its walls already lined with books and slates, a beacon for the children of trappers and settlers. The first day, she'd stood at the door, her hair catching the sunlight, and welcomed a dozen students, their faces shy but eager. Cole had watched from a distance, leaning against a fence post, something warm and unfamiliar settling in his chest. Now, weeks later, the cabin was alive with sound, children reciting lessons, Clara's voice steady and kind, the creak of a new bench Cole had built with his own hands. He worked the barn, repairing beams and mending harnesses, his hands finding purpose in the labor. Eli was his shadow, always asking questions, always watching. "Show me how to fix this," the boy would say, pointing to a cracked plank or a rusted hinge, and Cole would, patient in a way he'd never been before. "Like this," Cole said now, guiding Eli's hands as they hammered a nail into the barn's frame. "Straight, not too hard. Let the wood take it." Eli nodded, his tongue poking out in concentration. The nail sank clean, and the boy grinned. "I'm getting good at this, ain't I?" "You're getting there," Cole said, ruffling the boy's hair. "Kid's a natural." He glanced at the cabin, where Clara was dismissing her students, their laughter spilling into the yard. Rosie ran among them, her new doll, a gift from a townswoman, swinging in her hand. She'd named the doll Hope, and every time she said it, Cole felt a pang he couldn't name. Clara stepped onto the porch, wiping chalk from her hands. She caught Cole's eye and smiled, a quiet thing that carried more weight than words. He tipped his hat, his throat tight. "She sees you," he thought. "All of you, and she don't look away." That evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the mountains in hues of fire, Cole sat on the porch, his hat resting on his knee. Clara joined him, a tin mug of coffee in her hand. Eli and Rosie played in the yard, chasing a stray dog that had wandered in from town. The air smelled of sage and earth, the wind soft for once, carrying no threat. "You did good today," Clara said, her voice warm. "That barn's starting to look like a proper one." Cole shrugged, his eyes on the horizon. "Just keepin' busy. Ain't used to staying right put." She studied him, her gaze steady. "You don't have to keep moving, Cole, not anymore." He looked at her, the words sinking deep. Staying put. He'd spent a decade running, from his past, from himself, from the ghosts that followed. Jasper's mill still haunted him, the screams never far, but here in this valley they were quieter. Not gone, but softer. Drowned out by Rosie's laughter, Eli's questions, Clara's voice calling them to supper. "I ain't good at this," he said, his voice low. "Being part of something." Clara's hand rested on his arm, light but sure. "You're better at it than you think," she said. "You gave us a home, Cole, not just a roof, but a life." He swallowed hard, his eyes on the children. Rosie ran to them, her face flushed, holding a fistful of wildflowers. "Look, Mr. Cole," she said, thrusting them at him. "I picked these for you." He took them, the petals soft against his calloused fingers. "They're real pretty, Rosie," he said, his voice rough. "Just like you." She beamed, then ran back to Eli, who was teaching the dog to sit. Cole watched them, his chest tight. Family. The word felt foreign, but it fit, like a key turning in a lock he'd forgotten he carried. Clara leaned closer, her shoulder brushing his. "You're staying, aren't you?" she asked. Not a question, but a hope. He looked at her, at the valley, at the life they'd carved from the ashes of that winter. The railroad might come again, or men like Creed, but for now, the trail led here. He set his hat on the porch rail, the gesture deliberate, final. "Guess I ain't riding out this time," he said softly. The sun sank lower, its light warm and golden, spilling across the valley like a promise kept. Rosie named the dog Home, and it stuck. Cole smiled, a small, real thing, and for the first time in years, the ghosts were silent. If you've ever found hope in the kindness of a stranger, share your story below. Your voice might remind someone that redemption still rides.